Now, as we go through the sprint planning process, we're going to take product backlog items, we're going to decompose those into tasks, and this will be the first opportunity where tasks will be assigned to individual team members. But you also want to make sure that you don't put too much on one person's plate, or you don't want them to be overutilized. So how can you guard against that? Well, that's where the capacity tab comes into play. So we have 3 people on this team. So to make things simple, everybody will be available for 8 hours a day for development. And you can see now that each individual developer for the time remaining in this sprint is 24 hours. But there's also a place where we can add days off. We can either do it for a team as a whole, or we can do it for a specific person. Perhaps Bob happens to have the 26th, the last day of the sprint, for PTO. So if we put that in, we'll see that Bob now only has 16 hours of availability, while Jane and I have 24 hours of availability. As a team, we have a total of 64 hours. So this capacity tab is extremely important, and it's one that you're going to want to use. All right, now that we have our capacity squared away, I've already gone and added a few tasks, but I'm going to run through that process to show you how to do it. Right now, I have a number of tasks assigned to Bob. I actually have too much assigned to Bob, but I've done that for demonstration purposes. So we really have 2 ways that we can add tasks in the context of a product backlog item from this view. If we go to the backlog view, we can see that we have this nice hierarchical view, and then right here we can go ahead and add tasks. And you can see that we have these 3 that are allocated to Bob. Now, if you recall from the capacity, Bob only had 16 hours available because he had 1 day of PTO. So look at this view, from this backlog view, we can see all of our backlog items with our associated tasks. And then on the right-hand side, we have the ability to see both what's allocated for the team as a whole. We can also look at specifically by activity. And then notice that neither Jane or myself have anything, but Bob now is showing in red. So as you're going through your planning process and as you're taking tasks, assigning tasks during the course of a sprint, you get immediate feedback on whether or not somebody is overcommitted. So let's do this. Let's go into this Research Google OAuth. I'm going to reassign that to Jane. We'll go ahead and close that. And now you can see that Bob is now at 16 hours, and then Jane is at 12 of 24 hours. So one way we can create a task is very simple. So on the Implement Google OAuth Provider, I'll click the little plus here, and it provides a dialog that we're pretty familiar with. So we can just type in something like Research Twitter OAuth Docs. We can assign that. I'll go ahead and assign that to myself. I'll put in 8 hours for that. And again, this activity would be development. Again, I can provide descriptions and other information as necessary, and I can go ahead and save and close. That's one way to do it. Another way to add a task is directly from the board. Now, when we do create tasks from the task board and this view in general, we do lose that nice view of all the capacity for the team by activity. We lose that view. However, we do get something in return because this is also an important view. It's a very valuable one. We can choose to change the way the board is grouped. Now, by default, it's grouped by backlog items, but we could group that by person. So now for each row, we can see what's assigned to me versus Jane versus Bob. And we can also filter or focus on, say, Bob's tasks. And that would shrink up my row and Jane's row so that if somebody wanted to focus on an individual's tasks to work on those, this makes it very simple to do. But creating a task in The task board is very similar and almost identical to creating it from the backlog view. We have the same plus icon here. If I hit that, and I could type something like research Google Analytics JavaScript library. We'll give that, say, 4 hours. We'll assign it to Jane, and we'll also give that the activity of development. It's very important to maintain these fields, because if you don't maintain the fields, even though they're not required, when you're looking at some of these at-a-glance efficiencies like capacity by activity or what have you, that data won't be available. So to the extent that a field makes sense and provides value, make sure you maintain it. I'll go ahead and click Save and Close. And here is our new task. And of course, if we go back over to the backlog view, where we can see the capacity, we can see Jane's allocation has increased a bit.